Welcome back to the Lightforge podcast. We are doing Priest now on the March of the Lich King card review, preview, evaluation podcast. It's me, ADWCTA, and we're looking at Priest now. Priest has one A tier card, and it is a common card. So that alone makes it super, super powerful. Common A tier cards are very rare. And in a low power meta, like what's going to come, a low power rotation, like what's going to come, this card is going to carry. And this is Mind Eater. Mind Eater is a 2-mana 3/2 undead. Death Rattle. Add a copy of a card in your opponent's deck to your hand. So it is a fully on curve minion that takes a card of about roughly equal power to anything in your deck and just gives it to you. That is an A tier card. And that sheer amount of power is going to push the needle in the Priest's favor. Unfortunately for the Priest, they're not really getting much past this. But just that card itself, that's going to be helpful. So the next best card in Priest in this meta is Shadow Word Undeath, which is a rare card. Shadow Word Undeath is a 5-mana shadow spell. 5 mana, deal 2 damage to all enemies, like a consecration. If a friendly undead died after your last turn, deal 2 more. So consecrations for 2 mana are like still 2016. We now know with the new Death Knight card that consecrations should be 4 mana and draw a card. So they should really be like 3 mana. So what's a 5 mana card gonna do? Well, yeah, it should really deal like 4 damage. But this one doesn't quite deal 4 damage. It really deals 2 a lot of the times. You have to be able to kill off an undead, which you have no means of generating, for it to actually deal the 4 damage. So it's very tricky to actually get going. Now, if you don't get it going, just a consecration even for 5 mana is not terrible. And if you do get it going, 5 mana deal 4 damage to everything is actually insanely powerful. So the card ends up being somewhere in the middle and ends up being a B. It's not great, but this is still probably, especially as a Priest, better than most cards in your deck. After this, the other two, not the other two. Let's just go do some more cards. Crystalsmith Cultist. Crystalsmith Cultist is another new card. It is a common card, 1 mana, 1/2. Battle Cry. If you're holding a shadow spell, gain +1/+1. This is a C tier card. 1 mana, 1/2s are terrible. 1 mana, 2/3s are amazing. Are you holding a shadow spell? I don't know. You might be. It's a C. Next one is Bone Caller. Bone Caller is a rare card. 4 mana, 2/4 taunt. Should be 3 mana. Death Rattle. Resurrect a friendly undead that died this game. So that Death Rattle is very good. You just need to have an undead that has died this game that is not like a token. Like, you need like at least like a 2/2 that has died this game to make this card worth it. Probably more than a 2/2, really. So, did it happen? If you play it on turn 4, it probably hasn't happened yet. But if you play it later on, then it probably has happened. But if you play it later on, what's a 4 mana 2/4 taunt? What's any mana 2/4 taunt, right? So, this ends up being a C. It kind of doesn't come together in Arena because you're much more likely to have bad undead cards, not bad, but just like small undead cards, than you are to have large undead cards. And this is just going to give you a random one. Then you have Haunting Nightmare, which is a epic card, 3 mana 3/3 undead. Death Rattle, haunt a card in your hand. When you play it, summon a 3/3 soldier. So it's a 3 mana 3/3, which is terrible. But when it dies, a card gets haunted, which is a random card. You don't get to pick it. And when you play that card, you get another free 3/3 on the board. So the tempo comes a bit later, and it's a little uncertain. Like if it haunts a card that is very situational or very high mana, you may not get it for a while, but you'll eventually get another 3/3. So it kind of makes up for it. It ends up being a C. Remember, a C is better than a spider tank. So this card is getting something here, but it's a weird card. It's a deserved epic card. All right. Next, let's do the other common card. The other common card is Undying Allies. It is a 0 mana shadow spell. After you play an undead this turn, give a reborn. This one's a D+. It is a 0 mana card. Not a lot of expectations for 0 mana cards. They don't do a lot. They're just here to add tempo. So whenever you have an undead, you get a little bit of extra tempo with this one. That's all. It's a dead card a lot of the times, but it's 0 mana, so it never gets in the way. Whenever you next play an undead, you just get that extra tempo. Like, what's a wisp, right? Like, a wisp is probably a D. This is better than a wisp. All right. Next up, we have Animate Dead. Animate Dead is a rare spell, 1 mana shadow spell. Resurrect a friendly minion that costs 3 mana or less. This is a D. I mean, if you spend 1 mana and you get like a 2/3 or something, even if it's not on curve, you're like pretty happy, I guess. It's just, it depends on what you play. There's not a lot of 1-drops, so your odds of getting something that's significantly higher than what you get for 1 mana is pretty good, actually, unless you have tokens and whatever to mess that up. But it is a bit RNG, and you can't play it on curve, which is mostly what the uses of those 2 and 3 mana cost cards are. So it just kind of doesn't serve a purpose. Like, at that point that you're playing this card, unless you like catch that zone, right, where you play a 2-drop, then that 2-drop dies, then you play a 2-drop, and then you animate dead, so you effectively played a 1 mana 3/2 or something, you're not really getting value that is actually useful out of this card. And then we have Grave Digging. Grave Digging is a epic spell, 4 mana shadow spell, draw 2 cards, cost 1 mana instead of 4, if a friendly undead died after your last turn. So this is a very conditionally played card. Like, 4 mana draw 2 cards is absolutely horrible. 1 mana draw 2 cards is amazing. But you have to have an undead, and then when it dies, you have to spend this 1 mana on that turn and play this card. So it's a bit rough if you don't have an undead in your hand or on the board when you get this card, because you don't know when you're going to play it. On the other hand, you're probably not going to play this card, even if it was something normal like 3 mana or 2 mana or whatever, until later on anyway. So if you do have an undead, you'll just play the undead and you won't be like hurting for like having not played this card or whatever. And then when that undead dies, you then just get a cheap draw. So it sometimes works out, but it oftentimes gets delayed a lot. And you really need it to work out. 4 mana draw 2 cards is like desperation levels of anti-tempo. And so this one is a D. That's it for Priest. Overall, it's got some highs, it's got some lows. As you probably expected, Priest deals a lot in the undead. And there's a lot of undead in this set to synergize stuff with. But their synergies just aren't all that good. So you end up with your best Priest card being Mind Eater, which again is like this like semi-random card that's just adding cards to you. So like generally good, but it doesn't really work with anything specific. And your undead combos, they exist, but they're not good. So you're not getting much out of the combos. Maybe in this low power meta, that's enough to get somewhere. But it's a little rough in terms of building a priest package that can make me excited to play priest. Mind Eater is such a big value card though. So just adding Mind Reader and the offering rate that Mind Reader will have, being a common class card and an on-curve card that you will always be glad to add to your deck. Like, there's no deck when you get to Mind Eater and you're like, oh, I have too much of X, I can't take a Mind Reader at its normal value. Like, no, you're going to take a Mind Eater. So that's Priest. We'll talk about the legendary cards next. Let's go with High Cultist Basilisk. High Cultist Basilisk is a 5-mana 3/5 battle cry. Resurrect all friendly undead that died after your last turn. I don't know what you're resurrecting. Hopefully it's something. Maybe it's something good. It's very situational. This card's going to be held in your hand forever. It's a D+. You could high roll with it. And you're in control of it. You know what you're resurrecting. But the setup is just really hard to put together. And if you have this card, you should really just play it whenever. Like, I wouldn't high roll with it. If a friendly undead ever dies, just play it. Get it out there. Right, remember, this is a D+ card. There's no need to get really big value out of it unless it falls into your lap. Next is Sisters Svalna. Sisters Svalna. Legendary, 6-mana, 6/6 undead. Battlecry, permanently add a Vision of Darkness to your hand. Okay, what is a Vision of Darkness? A Vision of Darkness is a 3-mana shadow spell that says discover a shadow spell. This stays in your hand. So it basically gives you a hero power where for 3 mana you get to discover a shadow spell. That's pretty damn good. It's like a warlock hero power, but you don't hurt yourself, so it's forever. It doesn't replace your hero power, so you still have your priest hero power, and it just costs 1 extra mana than a normal hero power. It's very good. Now, a 6-mana 6/6 is not that good, but it's not unplayably like bad tempo. So this ends up being a C+. You are not getting free spells, right? You still have to pay for it. It just locks in the inevitability that you win. Like, you will eventually win the game if given enough time. But you're already behind on tempo, and your gains is all card advantage gains and anti-tempo gains. So, like, it feels like, oh my god, I win the game. How could this card only be a C+? Well, you don't win the game until you, like, tempo back out, right? And you're down on tempo, and nothing you gain helps your tempo for, like, many turns after. A lot of the factors is how long it takes before you can start getting value out of the stuff you do. And for Sister Svalna, unless you already have the board locked down, this card is hurting. And that hero power is not usable. But if you have the good setup, or if you play this card and then, regain the board, do all the whatever stuff, then you have guaranteed your inevitability. And you always have, like, an out with that hero power. So, yeah. That's the game. Priest. I don't know that I'm excited to use it. I think the power level for Priest is okay. Mostly because of the Mind Eater. But yeah, I don't know. We'll see. Maybe the Undead package comes together in a fun way. But maybe I'm just a hater, and I don't see the Undead package as being particularly fun in any class. But this is Priest for you, this expansion. Next, we will go to Rogue. See you guys there. Until then, this is ADWCTA.